This week on Environment, shale gas, energy game changer or a dangerous fossil fuel? France turns its back on what could be the largest deposits in Europe.
Closing the door with such force does nothing for progress.
World reserves could provide an extra 150 years' worth of current gas consumption, but at what price?
In blue barrels, you have chemicals, they are corrosive.
While France shies away from shale gas, others welcome the energy bonanza with open arms.
It's great for us and the region because it will bring in jobs.
This is sensitive territory in France. Just 1 hour out of Paris, a terrain rich in hydrocarbons, mainly conventional oil, but possibly also a new fossil fuel that's transforming the energy game.
There are two threats, shale oil and shale gas. The only problem is that to extract the shale hydrocarbons, it's necessary to use a technique known as hydraulic fracturing, which is very harmful to the environment.
Only 18 months ago, an American petrol company was ready to begin exploration in the region.
The drilling site's not far from here, 1 kilometre to the northeast as the bird flies.
So here we are at the site, not that you can see much happening because France has closed the door to shale exploration for both oil and gas. It's not against the energy per se, but hydraulic fracturing, the only viable technique today to extract the resource. But what would happen if another less controversial technique was discovered? Could that door be reopened? This next report takes a look at some of the options.
Caroline keeps a close eye on this site, making sure no further work is undertaken, no new machines have arrived. She wants to protect the groundwater, and not only for her community.
This region is home to an important waterway. There are 6 or 7 million people from the Paris region who rely on this water.
Of particular concern is hydraulic fracturing, a technique that requires pumping hundreds of thousands of litres of water, along with chemicals and sand, deep into the ground to free up gas trapped in shale formations. There are fears the process could pollute the soil and adjacent groundwater. The race is now on to find an alternative. At the University of Pau in the south of France, a team of researchers are working on a technique known as electric spark fracturing. It involves creating an electric arc in water, just like a flash of lightning, which causes micro cracks in the rock. The researchers then inject nitrogen into the centre of the rock. These tiny bubbles are evidence it works.
It allows us to show that electric spark fracturing creates microcracks in the rock, which then enables gas to move through the rock.
This research was funded by petrol giant Total, one of many oil companies looking for more environmentally friendly techniques.
It's better for the environment because we don't have to use large amounts of water in the process. And we also have more control over the area that is cracked, compared to hydraulic fracturing where the affected zones are much larger.
There is a safer, cheaper...
Competition is fierce. American-based Camara is behind a technique which fractures the rock using hot gas and no water.
Exothermic or non-hydraulic extraction.
The amount of money pumped into research is being kept secret, but petrol companies have been quick to recognise that shale reserves are already transforming the energy market.
France imports 98% of its gas consumption. It would be extremely unfortunate to deprive ourselves of this national resource if we can find a way to exploit and produce this gas.
At the heart of the issue is the question of a country's energy independence. This Canadian company produces 2/3 of the oil made in France, but it's only around 0.6 of the nation's demand. The idea of tapping into potential shale reserves has obviously crossed its mind.
Right now, shale oil is forbidden by the law, so we're waiting for a clear position from the government to determine if the government is willing to allow shale exploration and development in the future. But here at Vermilion, we don't do any research at all on shale hydrocarbons in France.
The French government's position is clear. The shale gas debate can be reopened if and only if an alternative technique to hydraulic fracturing is made viable in the coming years.
So France has very little petrol, but perhaps enormous reserves of shale gas, which could essentially make the country a lot less energy dependent. We've already seen results in the United States, which embraced hydraulic fracturing and now produces more gas than it needs. China, with the largest deposits of all, is surging ahead with exploration, and enormous reserves are also believed to be in Australia, Argentina and Brazil. But perhaps it's South Africa who could be next in line after the country became the first in the world to lift a moratorium on the controversial fracking technique. This next report from France 24's correspondent in Karoo in the Cape region.
Langsburg lies where the Karoo begins and lives off nothing but farming. Half of the farms in this district lie in the shale gas exploration zone. The mayor is deeply worried.
I don't think the farmers were even consulted before this area was identified.
To prove his point, he takes us to one of his neighbours who has just heard that soon holes may be drilled in his garden. The Conradi family raise sheep and have a flock of 2,000. They raise mostly for their wool. This farm depends heavily on water. The more the sheep drink, the finer the quality of their fleece. Drought is already a problem in the region. The prospect of having the water supply polluted by hydraulic fracturing does not make the farmers sleep any easier.
Now we're very worried because it seems that the government is giving an okay for this.
And we can do nothing. And this farm is in my family till 1840.
The Karoo is all the more vulnerable because its water runs so close to the surface. But since this part of the world is half deserted and it is home to the 5th biggest reserve of shale gas in the world, the government has given the go-ahead, is now facing regular protests against the planned exploration. These activists protested at the gates of Parliament in Cape Town on September 22. Each of them had something to say to the Minister of Mineral Resources.
Shabangu, before she signs any document, she must consult civil society.
Minister Shabangu has just told the National Assembly that the exploration will proceed. Amid an outcry, she tried to strike a reassuring tone.
Fracturing, when and if it eventually happens, will be authorized under the strict supervision of the Monitoring Committee.
But the ecologists don't believe a word. They're getting ready to go to the Constitutional Court to defend the affected community's right to clean water.
Certainly in this country we have got hope that if there is merit in what you're doing and if it is in the public interest at the end of the day, you can stand a chance of succeeding.
The activists think they have a few years still to mobilize all the goodwill they can find and make the rest of the world understand that their desert is a treasure.
France, more than ever, is in need of alternative sources of energy, especially since pledging to reduce its reliance on nuclear. Poland, however, couldn't have more of a different stance. It's planning to open its first nuclear central in the next 10 years and at the same time frantically searching for shale gas. This next report from one of its many shale gas exploration sites.
They call it the Tower, and these people have come a long way to see it. Workers using the tower, which is owned by a national Polish company, are on the hunt for shale gas. They plan to build another one around 200 kilometers away, nearby to where these people live.
I'm from the company. We organized this trip to show people how it all works, because people are sometimes afraid when we talk about drilling.
What you see here is for drilling. We put one on the other and drop it down to around 3 kilometers of depth.
Poland wants to produce shale gas as a way of loosening its dependence on Russian energy. However, the high price of setting up the necessary infrastructure has already led foreign investors like Exxon to pull out. On top of that, there are the pollution risks, but these people have other considerations to take into account.
It's great for us and the region because it will bring in jobs.
It could happen, but not right away. First, they have to find the gas. The geologist overseeing this project says that the gas is there, it'll just take a lot of drilling to get to it.
Yes, there is gas underground, that's sure. It's our gas. I don't know how long it will take. We have to try. We need time and money.
The village of Lubicino sits in the shadow of the drilling tower. Rumours have been circulating here about the strange building site and what it will mean for the community. One thing is certain, though, the public drilling company has put 10,000 euros into renovating the local school.
It's the first time a company has given us money.
According to recent figures, 3/4 of Polish people are in favour of drilling for shale gas. Near Warsaw, Marek is one of the few who question the environmental consequences.
In blue barrels, you have chemicals, they are corrosive. These chemicals are added to water and then pumped with very high pressure under the ground.
Despite the environmental concerns, the Polish government's pushing forward and has granted hundreds of permits to prospectors across the country.
Shale gas is sometimes hailed as the green energy of the future because it emits half the carbon emissions of coal. But environmentalists are worried that the more time and money that goes towards developing this new fossil fuel, the less time and money for truly renewable sources such as solar and wind. That brings us to the end of this week's show. Thanks for joining us here on France 24. We'll see you next time.